Welcome, welcome. And we'll wait a few more minutes before we get started because there's a couple people that told me they were going to attend, but thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And I have our smooth music coming for everyone as well.
Caitlin, where are you sitting?
I'm on my deck in the backyard. So not far from you if you're working from home.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, I'm totally tempted to go sit out there, like especially before it turns 100 degrees.
I know, I've got like all this greenery back here.
Yeah.
And it's shaded right now, and so it's like perfect.
Yeah.
Caitlin, it is beautiful.
Yeah, I think
you look like you're camping or something.
I wish. No, I'm working from my house, just on the deck currently.
Oh, good for you.
Good, good. We always love when you can get some sunlight in. That's good. Some work done and some light. That is a
fresh
great
air.
thing. Hi, Beth. Hi, Chelsea. How are you today?
Hey, how's it going?
Good, good. How have things been your way?
Pretty good. Staying busy. So yes, it's been going good.
That's always good, right? That's all. We like busy, not too busy, but busy enough to like
manageable busy so far. So
okay, it's manageable busy. Manageable busy. That was a tongue twister for
right.
me. Manageable busy is always good, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm excited about this. I know we got to get I'm gonna send it out to some other business contacts too, so we can hopefully get some more business leaders on here because there's several people asking for this space, and so maybe just a reminder like, hey, this space is available, so join us and see. But we also record it so that we can share it out like on YouTube and stuff too. So. And Stacy, have you ever thought about us even maybe going live like on social media and stuff too as we do these, or does that counter people wanting to have open dialogue?
I haven't thought about it, Joy, but I think it's a question for the group, maybe. Or maybe there's like some portion that's, more private and more live. I don't know.
That's something
I see we have some new folks here too, so it'd probably be good to have them weigh in as well.
Yes, thank you. Hi, Jean. Hi, Norm. How are you? And I'm actually
good. How are you doing?
I am well. I am well. I cannot complain. I'm going to stop share for a minute just so I can see everyone. And then I'll come back and share. Get back on. Jean, how are you?
I'm fabulous. How you doing, Joy?
I can't complain. I can't complain. Great. If you are new to the group, if you could just drop a name in the chat, that would be awesome. Amazing if you're new to the group, although I'm looking right now. Nice to meet you, Stacy.
What about all of us old people to the group?
The new
Joy?
People might want to meet people who have been.
I love it. Well, let's do that. I love that idea. Why don't we all just do a virtual introduction in the chat? And then that way, if you just put your name and where you're from in the chat, we have an opportunity to connect with everyone. Because I am the worst in just assuming that everyone knows everybody just because we're a smaller community or whatever have you. But again, that's some of the purpose of this space as well, to make connections. So feel free to drop your name, where you're from in the chat. Perfect. Okay. And it says One Cedar Valley of mine, but I'm actually the executive director too. So introduction, just in case we haven't met before. Nice to meet you and appreciate you joining us in this space today. We'll go ahead and get started. I know Kingsley's coming. He shared his he'll be here shortly after, but we always start by kind of sharing some things about our work as well. So we'll go ahead and get started with that this morning as people continue to join us. So I'm going to share screen again. All right. And so this is the Economic Inclusion Network. And one of the things about the network convening, Jean Trainer, Stacy Van Gorp were on, and Jean started this several years back in response to really employers' requests as things were coming out, like surrounding the 24/7 Wall Street report. What can we do from the employer and leadership side and educational side to really focus on having economic inclusion in the Cedar Valley? So some of the things that we tend to cover, we do talk about, of course, ethnicity and race, but also abilities, also religion, from all aspects. How can we make sure that we're really cultivating the Cedar Valley as an inclusive place where everybody can thrive and have opportunities? And so that's really what our conversation talks a lot about. And again, I'm going to, as you can see, it's an opportunity for everyone to contribute, participate, and just benefit from our economy. And right now, you'd have to kind of be, if you are paying attention to any type of news, you know that we are experiencing talent shortages, right? And so how do we look at the disparities highlighted, like in the 24/7 Wall Street article, but also utilize that information to fill workforce needs? And so when you talk about communities of influence and who we want to be a part of this group, if you feel like you should be a part of this group, if you want to have a voice, then this space is open to you. We aren't saying you have to be a CEO or HR manager. Everybody who wants to play a role in having economic inclusion in the Cedar Valley, we do want you to have an opportunity to participate. And so right now, we'll get started. Again, this is just a reminder of kind of why we came together too, looking at the numbers. And something that we usually start these meetings off with is we actually share over the last month, what is something that you've done, maybe a partner that you've worked with or a resource that you looked into that really was around economic inclusion in our community. And actually, before we had it where you dropped it in the chat, but let's go ahead and we'll just do a quick outsharing of what that is. And I'm going to actually come off screen share for this again, so that we can truly talk about what are some things that we have done over the last month. And I'll go ahead and I will call on people. And then after you share, if you can call on the next person, we get a decent sized group too. So if we can kind of keep it to about a minute or so, that would be great. But I'm going to start with you, Caitlin. And again, feel free to pass. If this is your first time in this space and you're like, Joy, I'm just getting to know this space. And so now that I know that that's a thing, I don't have really much to share. We know everybody's doing work in the community. So don't feel, this group is not a space where we feel like, oh my gosh, I got to prep so that I have something to report out. That's not what this group is at all. So if for some reason you're like, this month, I had to just focus on my duties at hand. And so I don't, that's okay. Like in this space, you can feel free to pass. So Caitlin, I'm going to start by talking to you. If you've done anything, again, partner, resource, something you're even thinking about, maybe you read something that jogs your mind that you want to share with the group, any of the above. We don't restrict how equity is working in our community. So
No, I appreciate that. Thank you, Joy. This is my first time being part of this group. But I've got two colleagues, Whitney and Beth, with Junior Achievement also on this call. And they've kind of taken the lead from our organization and they have done an amazing job. We've established more of an external and internal committee to focus on just diversity and inclusion on, from a board perspective, from a volunteer perspective, a staff perspective. We've done some work internally with book clubs and diversity chats. And so we've done a lot, but I'm going to pass it off to Whitney, who kind of leads the charge on our team because she can kind of go a little more in detail on that stuff.
Thank you. And I guess, Stacy, I appreciate you putting the prompt in the chat so I can refer to it. So Whitney Schrader with Junior Achievement of Eastern Iowa. One of the things that we did this last month that kind of is going to help as a steering tool for us, Inclusive ICR had a free index that we could take. So we participated in that and we received our results. So we're going to be looking at that as a leadership team by the end of this month to kind of know what direction we need to go, where some of our areas of opportunities are as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. And I will pass it off to Rhonda.
Thank you. I've just been doing the same thing I've been doing here in higher ed to support and promote access, inclusiveness, belonging as best I can, given the legislative parameters in K-12 and higher ed. It calls for me to be a lot more creative and intentional and strategic.
Rhonda, is there anything that we can do to support you too from a lens of just thinking about economic inclusion? And so often that's one of the factors that drives business to our community. So is there anything that you think we can do to support you as well?
You know, one of the great things about this group, I'm fortunate to be a part of it because this is the choir actually, you know, so I consider you all to be DEI ambassadors. That said, at this point, the most you can do for me is just pray for me to keep saying no, but honestly, for those of you who don't know, I don't want to get too deep off into it because a lot of you are on the business and industry side. Being on the education side is my job has become a lot more tenuous and emotionally challenging. And so I've just been doing the best I can with what I have. I'm very fortunate to have a very supportive leaders here. And so we're going to continue to offer the services to everyone who wants to attend college.
Hey, Rhonda. Yeah. Rhonda, I'm going to just jump in real quick and add the fact that recently this summer, we took a group of students of color through our Ignite program. The first program we had down at our Automation Robotics Center in TechWorks, had the opportunity to go down there and look at that program and them in the program. It was really exciting to see all the young faces going through that Ignite program and what that means for increased participation within advanced manufacturing here in the Cedar Valley. So that's the only thing I would add.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Holcomb and Rhonda, both for sharing that. And a through line for that too, Rhonda, is because you all are actually in the manufacturing and equity and inclusion cohort, which is a national cohort. And so it was really interesting because when we had some funders and national level practitioners here to talk about that, and Rhonda actually did a panel about it as well. And it was cool that they got to see the through line. We actually took them over to Ignite too. So they actually got to see those same kids, Dr. Holcomb, and talk to them about, manufacturing, things like that. And so it's this interesting time where a lot of times the legislation hasn't caught up with business because business can make decisions a little bit differently. And so even thinking about how we support our infrastructure to keep economic inclusion going, even while all of that is happening and getting it figured out. So the kids have been really, really proud of the kids this summer, and adults too. There was actually adults there too, and just a really good bunch down there at Ignite. So, all righty. The next person, let's say, how about Chelsea?
I just had a feeling you were going to call on me. Let's see. Some things I've been working on here. I'm with the City of Cedar Falls. I'm the DEI specialist. So, been a lot more intentional in our recruitment, including a lot more area groups when we send out, basically letting people know when we have a job. We've been sending that information out to a lot more organizations and groups in the area, so they have access right away. We've also I've been a lot more involved in just really the process of hiring here. So you know, when we have certain, especially with our leadership roles, I've been brought into looking at our interview questions. One thing I like to do is just include, especially with, you know, our higher up or management or supervisors, just putting in questions about, you know, what are people's plans to enhance diversity, equity, inclusion within, you know, their department. Just something simple to do, especially if you have, like I said, people who are going to be more interactive with the public or overseeing teams, just a simple question you can ask in interviews. And then otherwise, been starting up really compiling a lot of information for an ADA transition plan for our city. So looking at accessibility of our services, our facilities. So that's going to be a huge undertaking. Just started that. And then we have also started a peer support program for our public safety for mental health. So I'm hoping that will, you know, not only help our current group, but hopefully that will be a nice selling point too when we are trying to bring more people on board. So yeah.
All right, Chelsea.
Hasn't gone yet. Going through my list here. Jean.
Thanks, Chelsea. So I'm really retired now, and I'm still a board member of Inclusion Connection. So I still wear an inclusion hat. And what I've been working on is dental care for people with disabilities. We really have a lack of dental care. Most people have to go to the University of Iowa Clinic, and it just seems like locally we should be able to serve community members that have a disability as well as elderly. And so I've been working with Delta Dental, and we've got a great team of people that are looking at this. It's not a new problem. It has multiple facets to it in terms of solutions. And I'm confident that we're going to come up with a solution or multiple solutions to provide care locally for the people that have disabilities.
Jean, I love how you preface that with, I'm retired now, so I'm not doing much, but here's a big undertaking that I'm actually working on. So if there's any way, of course, Jean, that we can support you in that, because that is huge. And just from a couple young people and adults that I'm connected to, I have always known that they've had to go travel to even just get dental care. And so it is time for us to do something. So glad to hear you're working on that, Jean. And again, if there's any way we can support.
Thanks, Joy. And I want to acknowledge Hawkeye. I had an opportunity to meet with Todd and Emily out at Hawkeye and find out the great things they're doing in the area of dental care. So keep up the good work there. And I will hand it off to, let's see, Kalola.
Thanks, Jean. I am Kalola. I am at Lincoln Savings Bank and currently the DEI manager there. And one of the things that we have done and we are currently moving forward with is we take employee engagement surveys, as everyone does. And this time we specifically had questions on inclusion there. And then we also had our the vendor that we work with, we had them do an analysis, just a DEI analysis of those questions, of the responses, and then they came back with our analysis, and it showed a couple different things that we know that we need to work on, which if we work on it internally, then it's going to show externally within the community. And one of the things that that we are really working on is, and I hear this, is hiring and recruitment, because we normally, I think it's the normal, you know, comfortable way of recruiting is how it's done now. And we need to look at different ways of recruitment to get more diverse candidates, more diverse candidates within the selection process. So that is one of the things that we will definitely need to figure out how to move forward with that. And I'm glad that I'm in this group because I know you guys have all the experience with that. So I look forward to the suggestions.
Nice.
Oh.
And Kalola, this is going to be a treat too. The fact that Kingsley's here, and it's probably, I've worked with Kingsley for a while, so I get to pull out stuff that like not only from UnityPoint, but just from him building plans when he was in Iowa City. And when I was at another organization, I used to go to him about that as well. So he just has such a wealth of knowledge to share that I think it is a great merging into it today. And Kingsley, that's why I'm saving you for last, because we're going to talk about what you're doing coming up here last. So, okay, Kalola.
Oh, let's see. Has Norman, have you went?
Hi everyone, Norman Grant, Four Corners Coalition. Actually, last week I had a really good meeting with Mayor Green, and we were looking at making a sister city between Cedar Valley and a city in Jamaica. So it was a meeting with both mayors and some parliamentary officials. And we're looking at how both cities could assist each other from a labor market side, from a schooling point of view. So for sure, conversations with Hawkeye will and you and I will be really crucial in making this something that is long term. But I was really excited to see how both cities could support each other and in going forward, and with what I'm doing as well in terms of filling some of the employment shortages within the Cedar Valley. So it was a refreshing meeting. Sitting back and just watching the minds go at it was awesome to see, and being able to steer that to fruition will be the goal for the next couple of months. So it'll be awesome.
Thank you, Norm, for sharing. And I'm going to jump in here because I know our guest speaker today, he has to, we have to wrap up at a certain time. If you did not get to verbally share, if you can drop your, what you've done for the month in the chat. And again, too, it might be your first time. You might just have introduced yourself. So no pressure, right? Like this group isn't about that. This group is for ideation. And so we have a space and a place where we can share ideas and figure out as a community how we can support each other. So, and then what I'll do is, Stacy, I'm gonna make a mental note to start with those people next time if they didn't get to verbally share out now loud. But so I'm gonna go ahead and read Kingsley's bio. I'm very, very excited because a lot of the work that you're doing, he has either done something similar or just knows how to really ignite recruiting, belonging, retention, all of those things. And so Kingsley Botchway II is the Regional Director of Human Resources at UnityPoint Health Waterloo Region. He was hired into his current position in July 2022. Previously, he was the Chief Officer of Human Resources and Equity for the Waterloo Community School District. His current role encompasses leading, directing, and managing personnel for the Waterloo region. He also oversees the strategic HR initiatives for UnityPoint Health Cedar Rapids region and is the HR leader supporting the corporate diversity efforts. Botchway is an avid believer of transformational equity leadership. He has given a number of keynote addresses at conferences throughout the state of Iowa on how to achieve true equity within our school system. He holds a bachelor's degree in criminology from the University of South Carolina and a professional doctorate in law from the University of Iowa. Botchway has received additional training and certifications from Harvard, Iowa State, Iowa, and Indiana universities. Through his work in the community, he has served on many boards, and he is currently a founding board member of 24/7 Black Leadership Advancement Consortium, or 24/7 Black, a group that aims to increase personal and professional development and amplify leadership and growth strategies and build networks of influence for Black professionals in the Cedar Valley. In his personal time, he is life partner to an amazing woman, and that she is, love Bethany, leader, mom, and shero, an advocate for disability rights. Bethany Jara is his partner. Together, they have 3 kids, Trey, Kai, and Kavia, who I have not seen in person yet. But so without further ado, Kingsley, I want to go ahead and introduce you, get started. And you have more on your bio, but I just feel you resonate so much with people when you talk and share. And so welcome, Kingsley. We're glad to have you in the space today.
Hey, appreciate it, Joy. And it's good to see a lot of friendly faces.
It is. So let's get started just with some conversation. And I think when we talked about this, I was like, this is a space of people, as Rhonda called us, like the choir, right? And so while we are the choir, I think we're remiss if we sometimes don't acknowledge that we want to do things, but can get frustrated on how can we move initiatives ahead in your organization or in the community as a whole. So can you talk to us a little bit about like what successful initiatives or best practices that you've done at UnityPoint? And I'm gonna, again, I know you, so I get to push a little bit beyond that, like just thinking about in your past, based on what people have told you they are working on or looking at working on, what are some things that you've done that can really inspire them?
Well, and I know that many of the people on the call are either leading or doing some of this work as well. So thanks, thanks, Stacey, for that additional message. I would say if you, I mean, for those that are, you know, I think I saw Todd on here, so I'm always call him out. It's good to see you, Todd. I just got done participating. Actually, that's where I was having some trouble getting on the McKinsey Leadership Academy. It's something that UnityPoint is actually paying for myself and other people to be a part of. We had to apply for it. We had to be accepted into the program. So you can't just sign up. But it's been a transformative program working with other individuals that have a similar demographic profile. And I would say for the leaders on the call, when I say leaders, I mean, I know that all of us are leaders in our respective rights, but those that have some of the ability to appropriate dollars and cents to certain things, if you can get your people of color, your employees of color to the McKinsey Leadership Program, Connected Leadership Program, whatever it's called, I think that would be transformative. So I think that's one thing that our organization has done well and stepped up. I would also say intentionally investing in certain roles and paying for certifications. I think, you know, I typically call a lot of the initiatives that we've been doing back to the future. So, you know, not too long ago, 30, 40 years ago, a lot of companies paid for certifications, paid for different educational requirements for the jobs that they're doing. And so we're just doing the same thing. And so instead of investing those dollars, potentially in signing bonuses and things along those lines, we're investing those dollars on the back end and looking at our internal employees and saying, okay, how can we pay for you to get the additional certification? So we look at even our EVS roles or our custodial roles. You know, how can we look in those particular groups that are typically our what do you call it? Entry-level roles and get them into higher level critical roles for our organization. And we've seen tons of different people that have done that. And I think we have a good example, right? Pam, you know, started as a CNA. And so she went from CNA to CEO and COO now. And so I think we have somebody that has that lived story, lived experience that we can utilize as a backdrop of this is what happens when we actually intentionally invest in our folks. I would say that's it for right now. Those are some of the cool initiatives that we're working on.
Okay, so I love that you mentioned that. I recently was talking with a manufacturing company that they're pretty decent size, and there was multiple stories in there of people that had started like 30 years ago as security guards, you know, like just kind of hourly security guards, and someone saw them and tapped them on the shoulder and said, you know what, I've seen you out here, love what you're doing, and I think that we have a place and space for you. And I sometimes feel like we've gotten away from that, right? Like when it comes to companies too, and I say this, having a recruiting company, being a recruiter, you know that, right? Like I say that even knowing that. So how do we make people even think about like who is accessible, like who is an awesome worker that maybe is an entry level that you can pull on and say, you know what, I think we have some more trajectory for you, or let's talk about it, especially when we're doing so much more with so much less. Like oftentimes people don't feel they have the time to even do that, right? And so how do you encourage people and companies to actually make space in place to actually kind of help people up that ladder of success?
Yeah, I would build those DEI metrics into your performance management system. I mean, I think that's what I've started to focus on a little bit more. Not to say that hiring and recruiting isn't necessarily what you can do, and you know, getting into those communities is very important. But I think that looking at your performance management system, what are your DEI metrics? I know that John Deere, they have metrics in regards to how they look at their succession planning. And so, is DEI incorporated into that? I know that we have similar metrics when we have, we look at succession planning. We're looking at how do we incorporate DEI metrics into that so we can ensure from a demographic standpoint that we look like the people that we serve. I mean, I think that it's making those changes, right? Because I think all of us have been in conversations or supportive conversations that circularly talk about the same issue over and over again, but we don't impact the right places, which for me is performance management, finance, and obviously recruiting. But it's impacting those three areas to truly make transformational change within your organization and community.
Help if I take my look. Okay, and I love that too, because I've always heard that that's one of the best, right? Like, look at it and make it a part of your performance evaluation. Right now, though, there's a lot of people that are fearful, right? Because there's a lot of things in the media and the news that we don't know kind of where we can go when it comes to our DEI efforts. And so, and I say this because I know you've navigated through that space. How would you encourage people to still build momentum when it comes to making space and making sure that we're accessible to people with disabilities, and maybe it's a workforce that predominantly has men, and so getting people comfortable with, we're going to try to get some more women in here, or people of color, or people that have different age range and things like that. Like, how do you make people understand that it's still okay to lean into that? And even tie it to some of your surveys or evaluations when they might be hearing like the opposite and things like that.
It's, I would say it's reframing, right? I think, in this current political climate, not only here, but across the country, we have two or three, but warring factions as far as, which ideology is the better ideology. And I don't know where everybody stands, so I won't go into what I believe is best, even though I do feel like there is one that's best. But I think for me, it's about just reframing the conversation. It's really, instead of, and I think there's been a number of conversations, now focused on LGBTQ, where it's taboo now to talk about initiatives in relation to that. I think Target, I just recently read, or maybe it was on NPR this morning, was talking about how they're facing significant backlash and now they're getting sued for some of the initiatives they put forward. And so, again, it's reframing those conversations is how do we, what's the business case for it? And I think that's where some businesses publicly have missed, but I know that that's what we've looked at. And a lot of our training actually, where we put forth, DEI education training that's required for every individual through our cornerstone, through our training module. It focuses on literally 4 different reasons why DEI is the business case, because we want it to be really clear beyond it just being good to be a human. I think it's the business case of patient care. It's the business case of overall dollars and cents, and it's the business case as far as looking at the demographics and the shifting populations within our area, but also in the United States. And so I think that's part of where sometimes we miss, because I think we believe that people should just understand, and the more and more I feel like I'm understanding that it's not the case. And I think people have now felt more emboldened and pushing back on the DEI work for various reasons, right? And because I think it's become more real, and at least more public. And so to that extent, it's just reframing it and having a different conversation. I think with the chaos around the staffing shortage, you have an opportunity to diversify in ways that you never had before. Now you can say, okay, we're going to have targeted recruitment efforts in different communities. You may not necessarily need to specify those communities from a DEI initiative and poster or plastered on a poster board. But I think it's getting out in those communities, showing up at different functions, being intentional in those efforts. And that's what's really worked for us. We've spent a lot of time with our Congolese population, focusing on individuals within our Congolese population and bringing them on board. And so we went from having a few individuals from the Congolese community to having now, a lot that we're able to bring into our entry-level positions. And now we're trying to figure out, okay, how do we then now level up, and how do we move those individuals into higher level roles and jobs and build some support around them.
I like that. And you also said that you're not even bringing them in with one job with the mind that they're going to be there for 20 years in that one job, but you're bringing them and thinking about, how do you have a career path for them within your organization? Well, what would you say though, because sometimes you hear this too, right? Like, we just hire or promote the best person, right? Regardless of sexuality, regardless, it's just the best person. Where would be some feedback you would give on that?
Yeah, I think we just get too mad when we hear those things, right? And so we block off some of the logical responses. You know, when that happens, they typically happen in hiring conversations, where I think we focus on the qualifications that don't matter. And I just say, like, let's look at the data. Because I'm pretty sure when you pull up, you know, the historical record of UnityPoint, there's a lot of individuals outside of nurses and, you know, doctors that need the specific qualifications to do their job. When you think about the admin level positions, there's a lot of people that didn't have the roles. I mean, I know of an institution community that was adamant in the talk that I gave to them that, you know, what I was telling them about potentially changing their job description was illegal. But then come to find out they changed the job description for another individual that they wanted to hire later on. So, I mean, that happens all the time, right? I think it's just calling it out, and actually saying, you know, hey, I feel uncomfortable with, you know, how we are proceeding in this particular manner. But the data, I mean, the data is the data, and the organizations that I've done equity audits for, many of them don't have the same qualifications that they're asking for the positions to have now. And so I think it's just not getting into that tug of war, right? It's like, hey, I totally appreciate where you're coming from, and you know, I think that's, you know, a concern that we really want to dig into a little bit more. Let's pull your information. And I'm in a unique position from an HR manager standpoint. Like, I have the data, like I can just pull it. So not everybody is in that role, but you know, you may not have HR leaders that are willing to do that either. But that's where that data argument is so telling, to say, let's just look at it. Let's go back in the history of the position and understand where we came from. And I would say, again, not only for senior level roles, but those mid-manager roles as well. Frequently, we have individuals that they either never have the qualifications, or they at least didn't when they started, and then we're able to give time to get the qualifications as well. So it's just being, it's confronting the situation, but not being confrontational.
Okay, I love that. Confront it, but not be confrontational. And that can be a challenge when you feel passionate about something, but I agree with that. You have to be willing to have a conversation with people so that you can kind of have some common ground on things. So I definitely think that's true. And you touched a little bit on job descriptions, right? Which again, you know, I've been in organizations too where they like don't want to change the job description because they believe that it has to have this and this and that, and come to find out, like, well, do I need a 50-pound requirement to lift this if I'm there on a computer and everything that they're ever going to do is on a computer? Then do we need to really have to require them to do 50 pounds? So how do you address things like that, right? Because again, that opens it up. Just by taking that requirement off would open it up to a world of candidates that maybe, you know, maybe I have a disability, so I can't lift things, but I have the ability to sit at a desk, right? And so, and how do you make people understand too that having accommodations for some of that, when people have the concept of equality as equity and they don't understand that those things are different? So how do you relay that to people?
Yeah, I think it's, you know, right now, you know, we've been going through job architecture work, but also job description review. And so I think, you know, we've been, you know, intentionally as an organization, as an enterprise, doing this work. And so it's a little bit easier for me to question or press pause. I think it's just pressing pause, right? I think sometimes, I think I say it to my team all the time, you know, what's their fire isn't, you know, our fire. And I think, you know, from an HR standpoint, I'm giving them permission to just slow down those conversations and actually look at the job description, ask questions about the work, because I think you're right. You know, many times it's not only the weight requirement, it isn't required. Sometimes it's the qualifications that aren't required. Sometimes it's specific pieces of the job description that, you know, you have to, you know, be here at a certain time, or other things where, you know, that isn't actually the case. And it actually started, Kyle, when I first got here, everybody knows I'm competitive. And so, you know, when I was asking, like, who's the HR leader out here that's doing a lot of cool things? And Kyle was the person name that came up from a polling standpoint the most. And so I met with him. I can't remember if we went for lunch or anywhere. Maybe we just saw a call, and he was talking about what he changed, not in the organization he's currently, I think either 2 organizations ago or 1 organization ago. And he was talking about attendance and how he removed the attendance policy. And that was just, you know, he just did it, and that changed their entire corrective actions and things along those lines for employees. And there was a diversity and equity inclusion piece to that as well. But what it did for me wasn't, I couldn't change the attendance policy, because when I was with the schools, that's, that's child endangerment. You can't just leave kids unattended if they're not there on time. Like, you have to be there on time. However, it made me think, when can we just remove things? At times we present barriers, or we focus on barriers that, either we ourselves put them, but more likely than not, people prior to us put those in place. Or I know that right now we're dealing with a driver's license issue, not to, call my organization out, but we have a driver's license requirement, and at least 75% of the jobs don't require a driver's license. And so we're literally going back through each job description, and those are thousands, and pulling driver's licenses because we know it's not required. We're not asking our PCTs to drive anywhere. They're going to stick and stay with the patient. But that's been a barrier for people to, having valid driver's license, or having a driver's license that, may have a charge or something on it. Driving, what is it typically? It's typically driving without a license, or revoked license, or whatever. I can't remember what I see in the background check. So removing that, it introduces a ton of individuals that may have something on their license that could hold them back. And so it's just been an opportunity where, again, sitting down, being intentional. And again, I think people, Kingsley used the word, so intentionality, you do it, you seem like you just do it. And a lot of times I just do. And sometimes it's the positional authority I have. But I think, beyond that, it's been test cases. And so we always are doing, what I tell my team is that we're always going to do more work than everybody else, because while we're trying to do what we've been asked to do, I also want to experiment on the side. And so we're working with managers or leaders that, hey, they're willing to do this. We have an established relationship with them, that we can do test cases, that we can build an ROI to go back to other leaders, and even my boss, to say, hey, this worked. And it's happened. It's happened right now with negotiations, where we've totally changed how we've negotiated with our union, and how we've advocated for, diversity, because of, wanting to build relationships and wanting to be friendly and not mean. So just worked out.
Along that, I love that you shared that, Kingsley, because along that line, I'm gonna pivot a little bit, and you mentioned something that I think is also good to share, right? That a skill that you have, right? Like, I've worked for you before, and you said, we're always going to work harder than everyone else. And I think that sometimes, especially, we were in this talent shortage, right? Where people would quit a job and things of that nature. Yet most people will do that for you, right? As a leader, people like, I left working in Cedar Rapids to come work for you at Waterloo Schools. And so what is something, and this is not in the questions I sent you, but I think as leaders that are trying to attract and retain talent, I do think you can share, like, what are some things that you do that helps you retain your talent, and that you make people feel like they want to work for UnityPoint or wherever organization you are?
And I think I said this to Pam before I even started. I needed to know that I had flexibility in my job, and I needed to know that, if there's a ethical issue, or anything along those lines, that we would be on the same path, right? And I think once I have that trust, or once I have that feeling, then it's like, full steam ahead. And if you know anything about Pam, she's even more full steam than me. That's at times I'm trying to slow her down, because I want to make sure we're going through everything. I would just say, I'll use that specific situation. It's just showing people, that they're valued. I think that what we've done from a negotiation standpoint, and actually Danielle was in here right before the meeting. So I had the meeting, and then I had Danielle, who's our UFCW representative, come in and just talk to us. It's like, bringing people to the table and actually having them, build the agenda together. And I think that's presented value. Or when I go and talk to our maintenance workers that have been disgruntled about, a lot of the things that are happening with them, it's having them be a part of the conversations and saying, hey, there's no curtain, right? I'm just going to have you, if you're interested in it, right? Let's bring the data to one of our meetings. Let's just talk about it, because I don't want it to seem, that I'm making a decision outside of, collaborating and dealing with people, or working with people that are actually doing the work. So I think that's where I've really tried to model that, but I've also tried to do it in practice, right? Where we've had people stay because of that. We've had people really enjoy their interactions. And I wouldn't just say with me, right? It's my entire team, because, you know, it's not just, you know, transactional. It's how do we sit down with you and how do we have a conversation? How do we change the narrative? You know, I had to apologize to Gene because I wasn't as present at some of our meetings around Project Search, and some things got awry and steered differently. And so, you know, I promised and made a commitment that either myself or one of my team would be there, you know, more readily, more regularly. But then beyond that, it's like, but then how are we actually changing our organization, right? I think there's an Elon Musk quote that we just did in our leadership meeting with our VPs was, you know, don't just change something to be different, change something to actually make it better. And I think that's where I think sometimes we change to change, and we change because of whatever's happening at the time from a public or political standpoint. It's like, did it actually make it better? Did we change people's, you know, perspectives? Did we actually get ROI or change people's hearts and minds? And so I think for me, it's valuing people and bringing people to the table, and it takes time, which is why I'm notoriously late, and why I can't get from meeting to meeting, is because those interactions take so much time. But, you know, I could, you know, I see some people laughing on the call. I think people know that I'm genuine when it comes to, you know, knowing that I'm doing that. And I think people value that. They know that I'm not just sitting around twiddling my thumbs or playing video games. I'm taking that extra time in a meeting because I'm building those relationships that are going to help have that person have value and stay within the organization, the company.
Nice. And yeah, people did laugh, but I do think people know that typically you are very, very, very busy. That's why we even appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation this morning as well. So I definitely want to say, yep, I agree with that. Like connecting with people and making sure they have a voice in it. And especially now, because it just feels like there's, again, that push to do more with less. And so the fact that you're still taking the time to have people included and have their voice actually a part of the decision making. Like I shared with somebody earlier today, I'm military, right? Like I have 16 years in the military. And so there was this transition about year 10 that people were like, you were told things on a need to know basis. Well, what people realized is that really wasn't building trust with like your workforce. And so then you had people that when people don't know, what do? They make stuff up, right? And so you had people that had all these wild thought processes about the work that was happening, when essentially, if there are things that aren't, you know, a threat to public safety or things like that, like, why aren't we sharing that with people? Why don't we build trust with people and actually ask for their input as well? I think that's critical too, because then if the answer is no, at least they know that you listen to them and then they are involved in the process. So people are a lot more likely to accept you know, I listened to you, I thought about what you said. Here's why we cannot do this at this time, right? Because that's a caveat too. It doesn't always mean that a no is forever, but this is why we can't do that right now. And what that does is it builds engagement with your workforce, right? Like we all feel better about that. Of course, we don't want to hear no, but then just, you know, getting an email that I'm sorry, we can't do that, right? Or whatever have you. So I love that you shared that too. And I've talked to other leaders about that's been a hard pivot for them to actually include their workforce in making decisions as well. So is there, Kingsley, anything else that you can think of that you really want to share around economic inclusion? And then after that, I'm going to open it up for questions too.
Yeah, I would just say briefly before questions, you know, again, some of the other things that we're doing, and I'm sure that, you know, others are doing as well, is, you know, leaning into our employee resource groups. We plan on, oh, I'm supposed to share this. If I'm not, don't remember that I said it, but we're focusing on, based on our climate survey data, we were, you know, told that we don't do enough to bring people together. So we're doing employee resource groups and employee resource networks, and we're building networks that actually started from an LGBTQ standpoint based on legislation happening from the state and the care that we were providing, and wanted to make sure that employees had an opportunity to come together and discuss. And if Joy, you remember, I did this, you know, at the Waterloo schools. And so we're just doing something similar. We're doing something for veterans as well. We have a number of different, you know, identities that we're trying to make sure that we encompass from the employee resource group standpoint. So I think that's where just be another initiative that, again, if people are interested or you already probably have something yourself, but wanting to have those groups, wanting to make sure that people can have those lived experiences, not only, you know, obviously where they live, but also where they work as well, I think is an amazing opportunity. But I would just say dare to be different. I mean, I think for me, having these conversations, you know, is great, especially when I'm speaking to the choir. There's others that are doing some of the similar work. I just think I'd be super excited to see like it just different, like, you know, just a community that looks vastly different, organizations that look vastly different than how they currently work. I think Gene knows when, I think I just said it recently. I mean, I want every single Project Search student. I mean, they should be working in the hospital in some capacity. How do we, if that's the goal, then how do we provide support around that, right? I think we just look at, you know, I think of so many different quotes, start with the end in mind, just, you know, what do you want to do? And then how do you provide support around that? And I think, you know, a lot of our leaders in this community, they do that, but they do it in other ways to get the ROI that they want. But how do we just tie DEI to it? So I don't know. If you have the answers, I'm interested in them because I feel like sometimes I'm spinning the wheels, but we're doing some cool work over here that I think we're really taking off on, and we're close. It takes a little bit to move organization of our size, especially as we standardize across our entire enterprise.
All right. Thank you, Kingsley. Does anyone want to come off their mic and ask Kingsley?
Joy, are you frozen or is just me?
Am I frozen? Okay.
It may just be me.
I think it might be everyone. Can you hear me?
Can hear you now, yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna turn that off for a moment. Does anyone want to come off and have any questions for Kingsley or a comment for Kingsley either? All righty.
Joy, I would just like to acknowledge Kingsley for all the work that he's doing in the community. You know, everything he touches is better as a result. And we're very pleased to have Kingsley be part of UnityPoint currently and Project Search and specifically. So thanks a lot, Kingsley.
And I just want to underscore what Jean said. She beat me to the punch. I've worked with Kingsley on several projects, and he's innovative. He's intentional and very strategic. He knows his stuff, and he makes a huge difference in our community with regard to, you know, marginalized individuals in particular. So kudos to you, Kingsley.
Thanks, Rhonda. Appreciate it. Hey, Joy, if it's possible to send this recording to jessica.meisner@unitypoint.org. I mean, I need that for my evaluation. I'd appreciate it.
I will definitely send it to make sure you have it as well. And I second that. I don't know if anybody else wants to thank Kingsley, but he truly is. We are lucky to have Kingsley here as a community. And just since he has been here, he has like hit the ground just running on so many different endeavors, from increasing the amount of teachers of color to creating opportunities in job to working with you. He's a person that asks all the time, literally what he says, like, can we do this? And it's funny because when you're on his team, you know, sometimes you have to say, okay, well, this is why. And then he'll just go, okay, well, then we won't do that, but maybe we can do this, right? Like he constantly thinks about what I laughing, but it's true. He's constantly thinking about ways to do things better for the people that work for him. And it's very interesting too, because from an HR lens, you know, sometimes you can get a little people can get, you know, a little jaded because you deal with so many issues of, you know, having a discipline. But to be an HR leader and think about it from still like having the human and human resources, I mean, that truly does just speak to who you are. And again, also that then people want to work and they want to stay and work where you're at and be around you. So I definitely want to commend that too. So thank you, Kingsley, for joining today. And we hope you come back to the network. Jean and I are asking people that we want to be a part of the network. All right.
Yeah, thanks, Joy. The only thing I would say, just to add, just again, thank you for everybody on the call, because I think I've worked with most people on the call. And if I don't remember your name, I think I remember your face. But the other thing I would just mention too, and I don't necessarily know that I would advocate for this, is you know, be in a job or position that you feel is worthwhile, and that you're doing so in a way that you know, you have some sweat equity or you're sweating a little bit. I feel like I'm telling my team that, potentially what we could do and what we're doing could have me fired. So I don't necessarily know that I advocate for people doing that. It's just how I live my life. And I mean, I'm not saying we're doing anything illegal, but I just think that we're trying to push the envelope and see how far we go. And at times, you make people mad. And I think I've been able to navigate those things and apologize when I need to. But I would say, like, as much as you can, put some sweat in this. I mean, I feel like I'm sweating all the time, or again, as I said, at least on the hot seat from a firing standpoint all the time. So, just want to acknowledge those on the call that are on the hot seats with me. Have been able to navigate pushing the envelope, but just something that I would challenge not only you, but obviously those that you engage with, work for, or come in contact with. Make it interesting. Life's too short. Let's do something fun.
I love that. Thank you,
I agree,
Kingsley.
man. I agree. Thanks, Kingsley.
All righty, I think that was Norm. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap up today with our completion and completion. For those who are new, that's where we have an opportunity to share things that we were pleased with, things that we were disappointed with, or things that we want to acknowledge as well. And I'll stop share. I just wanted people to see that as well. And my camera is off so that hopefully my bandwidth, you can hear me. But would anyone like to share anything that they were pleased with, that anyone or anything they want to acknowledge, or anything they were disappointed with? All righty.
I would just have one pleased with an acknowledgement, Joy, that I'm pleased with the attendance today. We had some new faces on the call, so welcome and please come back, and please encourage your friends and colleagues to join us on these calls, because I do think there's still value in what the network is attempting to do. And when we have speakers like Kingsley, you had to have a positive takeaway today. So thanks for being on the call, and please invite others.
Thank you, Jean. I definitely agree with that too. It was really good to see some new faces here, and we hope that not only will you come back, but that you bring someone else back that can share in this message too. Next month's guest to kick off Latin American History Month is Claudia. She runs a nonprofit here in town that is focused on empowering Latin American populations here and just doing the work. And again, one thing about our community, we have so many powerhouse people that just quietly do their work, and Claudia is one of those. And so I'm excited for her to come to this group and share what she's doing. I mean, I believe they do English classes. She does workforce initiatives. She does a little bit of everything, has a place, a location, and everything. And yet oftentimes when I'm in spaces, people didn't know she even existed. And I'm like, yeah, if you're trying to connect with other individuals, go talk to Claudia. So I actually asked her if she would come speak with us and share some of her information, and she agreed. So hopefully everyone will come back so that they can meet Claudia at our next opportunity. And if you did not get to virtually share or verbally share what you had been working on, then I'll try to start with you for our next session too, because we want you to have the opportunity to share and speak. But again, you always have the right to say, I'm going to pass for this month. So it's not pressure there, but we do want this space where if you want to share what you want to share or ask questions about what people are doing, you have the opportunity to do so. And thank you, Jean, for this opportunity too. I know it is the choir, but I absolutely love this group of people, and I think we will get to what we're trying to do. So does anyone else have any disappointments or acknowledgements or anything? All righty. Well, if not, everyone enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the weather. I'm so jealous Caitlin's outside over there. So everyone enjoy the rest of your day. And we will see you next month. Have a great one.
Hey, Joy, would you give me a call in my office when we get off of here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.